Hello, folks. This is Shippy the Explorer. Welcome back to this station, and trust that you're okay and doing well. And if you're not, we are wishing you all the best and speedy recovery, and get well soon and feel well, feel better, and all the prayers are coming towards you. Um, Here we go. I know we're standing beside, we're talking, outside is cold. That's the bottom line. And I sent to not able to tape outside and walk around the garden as we used to. And, and, but what, so I came inside and said, what we're going to sit down and pull a chair up and let's talk. Let's talk about olden days and changes in your life. You know, I have the flag of America right beside my head, and it's a reminder that it's a strong reminder that I'm in America. And when you're in America and you're an immigrant and you travel and you get your green card and you're a citizen of the country, a new country that you are residing, you have to. You're obligated to love that country and follow the rules and regulations of that country, and and that's the best thing to do, because you came here for different reasons. You might have been brought up by your mother, father, your parent, a cousin, brother, sister, or you came up in the old days under work sponsorship, and now you're here 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years, and you are now part of this society. And many of us, I'm Shippy the Explorer, I'm immigrated from Jamaica, but a lot of you that I'm speaking to now immigrate from other Caribbean countries, islands, and Central America, South America, Canada, even Europe, Africa, and we are now in this country, and you can't avoid that the times have changed, and where things are now precarious and a little bit scary, and for some of us, and those of who I sympathize with those of you who are not in a good standing, because I know you have to be looking over your shoulder ever so often, and I'm not sure. I can't give you advice in what to do in that sense, because if it was me, I would probably in the case if pressure is down so bad, we'll just pack up and leave. Leave Dodge in a respectful way, and go back to the old country, and see if you can reestablish yourself in that society. But there's a dilemma there, because I know if you're up here sometimes 40 years or 50 years. I think I recently saw a guy in England, and I talked to him, and he was proud that he hasn't been back to Jamaica in 50 years. And I said to myself, I said to my wife, and then I thought, he go back home, he's at loss. He's as lost as a lost sheep. Probably wouldn't even know where to turn after he comes out of the airport. Doesn't even know which way. Try to find his house and find his grandparents' land or house or old kitchen, and he can't even find it. And that was kind of disappointing to me. That he was there in that country so long, and he seemed like he was proud of that, you know. But you have to. But there's another case. We recently family went to Jamaica, and believe it or not, we're trying to find my wife's grandparents' house in Another Bay. And we drove up uh, um, what's it, Gabriel Heights or whatever it was, Gibraltar Heights, and we were back and forth. And all we could remember in our mind was Gibraltar was one little lane in the whole days 30 years ago. And now Gibraltar is streets left and right and north, east, south, and west with like it's a center with houses turned all over the place. We asked around, and if we could, for direction of one of their uncles, and I think we were able to find that house. But oh and behold, we could not find her grandparents' house. So that's the show that you have been settled here for a long time, and now I said go back to the flag. We are now Americans, and we are settled in, and we are proud of it. But that doesn't negate the problem. Not because negate this the question that if any society you live in, if it's not it's not homogeneous or comfortable to live in, or you feel like things are changing and it's antagonistic against the way of your life, you should be able to maneuver within that society and have the right to voice your opinion and take action in your vote and make things correct matters as best as possible, so that you say that the old saying, you go to Rome, you live like the Romans. So we are living now as Americans because we are mingled and co-mingled with all the ethnic mix in this country, and a lot of us, we're loving it because it makes this country what it is. Great ethnically mixed country with its food and cultures and languages and colors and complexion and way of life, and that's what make this country great, and you have to love it. But if you're here a long time and you sometimes you're reminiscing about the old country, and in my case I reminiscing about the old days. And so the topic today, I say, well, I remind you that you're watching Shippy the Explorer. Like, share, and subscribe, folks, if you like these type of things. And today we are having a talk, and maybe for the next few days we'll just sit down and talk. But let's go back to the topic of olden days and living, comparing that with where you are now and where you're coming from. I'm old enough to know. Let's talk about olden days in Jamaica. St. Andrew, rural St. Andrew. 5 years old, 6 years old, I'll dash out of the house and run down to the gully and pick up coconuts and have mangoes, fresh drinking coconuts or mangoes or guavas. And then if you're hungry, you run down to the swamp, and there's a dasheen in the swamp, and you cut the inner young leaves of the dasheen, and you put it in a basket or in a pan. And then when you carry that basket down to the riverside, would dip that basket into the river, the streams along in Sandy Gully, and you come up with the basket with the water pouring out the bottom, and then in the basket you see this little shrimp that jump in, boom, 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 and you quickly grab them and you put them in your pan, and then you go for it again and you dip underneath the water. And by this time, by the third dip, the water is now cloudy with mud. And you come up again with the basket and you see some yampis, a little fish, and you wonder if you can take those too, but you know that nobody has told you that you can eat those fish. But you see the shrimp again and they jump in, bum, 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 and you grab them and you put them in a pan. And you do this, and by the third or fourth time you dip that basket into the swamp. Ever so often, when you come up, you look in the basket and you see ribbit, ribbit. Frog is looking at you. Frog or two. And what do? You jump back. And sometimes it's a big frog too. We call those land frogs, we call them frogs. But really, when you come to America, you just back to the American culture, you come here, you realize that what we call frog back in Jamaica, in the land, it's regarded as toad in the American culture. So toads are on the ground by technical correct term, and what we were looking, what in those baskets in those days were toads. And in the trees, the ones that in the trees are making ribbit, ribbit, those are called frogs, tree frogs. So when you look in the basket, man, and you see those toads, let's do the correct term, you just quickly dash the basket, spin the basket out, and spin those out. And you do that fishing, river fishing, for another 2 hours, and you may get half a pound of shrimp. Sometimes you get a heel and heel, a little one. And sometimes you get a mullet. But in the smaller streams of the West Rural St. Andrews, you get the shrimp, and sometimes you get a darker shrimp in complexion, and you call that JANGA. Now we're talking about olden days because I'm trying to show you that although you're in a new society where you have roads and electricity and running water and schools and you're able to zip to the supermarket, most of us, and we can get our food and we can zip to the doctor and we have good hospitals. Most of us were coming from third world, they call it third world countries, and the olden days of surviving were different. And I'm talking about the Jamaican culture because I've never lived in any other country in my life. I've visited so far maybe 30 countries in the world, but I've only lived in Jamaica and in America. So, but with the tension that we sometimes face in the developed country, in the industrial and mega countries and societies and rich societies, it's somewhat sometimes tense and it's toxic to the body. So what you do is that you sit down and you're reminiscing about the olden days on the hillside and swampy streams of rural St. Andrew, Portland and St. Mary, Clarendon, St. James, all those countries, all those parishes with their back country rivers. But you remember, I'm old enough to remember that when I dashed out of the house and we ran into the bushes and we were able to eat guava and we were able to fish for shrimps and JANGA, and we picked the heart of the dasheen, and we run up the other side of the hill and we pick a chocho, and then we pick a breadfruit and we go up to the top and we run to the shop and we buy penny flour or tuppence flour and we run a boat. And some of you know what I'm talking about. Run the boat, because you're putting the JANGA and the shrimp and the JANGA and the shrimp and the chocho and the coconut and the dumpling. You use the flour to make a dumpling and you put a little salt in it and you start to boil the soup and you boil that down, and in an hour and a half you have JANGA soup or shrimp soup, and you eat your belly full and you are happy. And you look around. It's not you alone, because sometimes it's one or two of you, and you share that food. And we're reminiscent today because we were full at that moment. Not hungry, full. But we were also happy because we did not realize that we were poor. And if we were poor, we were happy poor. We were happy folks. We didn't have to deal with, in the countryside, we didn't have to be dealing with paying the rent and the mortgages and electrical bill. Light wasn't in the country at that time when I was 5 and 6 years old. No electricity was in the country. If you had water, running water, it was a pipe or tank. Water was coming from the tank. We catch the water from the roof. Or you take your bucket or your plastic container, your zinc pan, and your wash pan, and you gone down to the riverside and to the stream, and you fill that container with water, and up the mountainside you walk back to fill the bigger wash pan or fill the drum with water so that the household has water. We are talking about old time reminiscent thing. We were happy. And sometimes you feel hungry, and there were some hard times too, to a certain extent, because sometimes when it's high summer, all the mangoes are off the tree or something like that, and then all you have is ratoon potatoes or something, or yams that you go and dig. Rent a yam in the back bush, or St. Vincent, or blue yam, moonshine yam. And you go and you cook another food, and you maybe buy some salt fish, and you cook that down with some coconut, and you call that saltfish rundown, and maybe a dumpling or two. In the St. Andrew, St. Andrew and St. Portland and St. Mary, I think you don't cook without dumplings. And that's the universal food in those dishes. But sometimes we're happy. And you get after the food is cooked, and you sit down over a table, you go to the back on the ridge side, and you clap yourself, your butt, on a grass root or a stone, and the breeze start to lick in your face and blow in your face back and forth, and the hot dumpling in your mouth, and they run down, and the thing, and you dip the dumpling in the rundown, you tap it, pop, 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 and you bite, and the heat catch you, and then to get the rest of the juice, you take the flour yam and you squash it in the rest of the juice. And you put that in your mouth. And you lick your tongue. And you are happy. You had something to eat. I'm talking about the old days in St. Andrew, the reminiscent. And some people will say, then boy, we don't go back home. We don't go back to that. It's different there now. Somewhat different. You can probably live that life still. But I'm talking about the tension between a developed country where you have all the amenities and all the richness and access to bank accounts and work and schooling and hospitals and all of that, but somewhat tense and feel depressed and pressed for happiness. And some of us are afraid, like that guy in England who didn't go back to England, didn't go back to Jamaica in 50 years, and he was proud of it. Whether he was running away from something, I don't know. Or, the old days, they say you throw the stone, you leave Jamaica, and as soon as you walk down the road, you just throw the stone over your shoulder, over your head. And you don't intend to go back to these countries. I think he's missing something. He's missing something. Or he missed out a lot of it. But I'm comparing a Shipping Explorer, the tension in a developed country where you have to pay the tax and the tax, different type of tax, income tax and property tax and sales tax. And tax on the family call and need something, and if somebody needs some pocket money and someone need another lift me up, and you're dealing with that. And when you think about it, of the olden days when you were free and running barefoot too. I remember that I grew up, the only time I put my shoes on was on a Sunday. Sunday morning you wash up, you go down to the stream and you bring up your bucket of water, cold water. And sometimes you put it in the sun to chill a little bit, get a little bit warm. And you bathe and you put on your warm clothes and you go on to church. And when you go to put on your one shoes, only pair of shoes, and you go to church. And after the singing and praying and jumping and joying and all sorts of things, and you're coming back home, and when you hit the hill or the gravel road, the road was paved back then days, gravel. You take off the shoes and you tie the two laces together, you throw it over your shoulder, around your neck, and you start walk. Because coming home, you're not coming straight home. You stop in sometimes and go down to Mr. Farm and feel like you pop a cane. Cut cane, you pop it, you hold it in the bottom, hold it stiff. Hold it stiff in such a way that when you bend it, you hear it pop in the road. Pow! And you ring it. And then you find the top of the head with the leaves and you reach a certain area where you can also pop that. And that's your sugar cane. That's your sweetener for the morning. You're coming back from church. And sometimes in your church clothes too. You see a mango on the mango tree on the side of the bank coming home. And hold and behold, if you fling this stone and you fling this orange and you fling it and you fling this stick and everything, and the mango can't come, sometimes you're tempted to climb the tree too in your church clothes. And those were the happy days. So you have your sugar cane and you have your mangoes, you eat green guava, and you're coming back home. And the shoes is saved for another day because it's around your neck. And we're talking about olden days. Compare. I know some of it was hard, but there was an element of happiness there, freedom and free spirit running, where you feel a spirit of freedom, poor and hungry sometimes, but if you look good enough and search good enough, you can find Dashin, you find Renta, you find St. Vincent, seeded yams down in the mango walk, down in the bamboo walk. And then I said, you get the JANGA and the shrimp and you boil the soup and you eat. So can we go back to those days? Not really. But if we're strong enough and we have the ability to go back home and your family have land, you can go back. Go back and get a good few people with you, or one or two or three, and you safely take your time and go back to the river and walk it and do your river fishing. If you can't do it, then you have somebody to do it for you. Sit down and boil the soup for your busu soup, and you sit down and you drink your soup and enjoy life. And you come out, what I'm saying is you have to survive in this country, but to survive sometimes is a pack up and you go into the old country and live some of the old ways of life. Some of it may never come back, because when we used to boil sugar and we and you have the cow, the bull cow, running around and marching around with a stick on his back tied to the sugar mill, and the mill is going woo, woo, and you're pushing cane and the sugar juice is running, dripping down dripping down to the side, and you collect that in the old copper and you drink some. You put, well, you don't drink, you put some lemon juice in that first. You drink it, strain it off, you drink it, and the rest goes in the copper. Copper 1, 2, and 3. There's a right word for it, but I can't remember the name for it. Dude. The Americans have names for everything. And you start boil. Once the sugar time start, you can't stop, folks, until the season is finished, or that season, that period of boiling is complete, because you boil the first set and then you skim off the corrosion on top, and then you put it, push the pan, the juice, the concentrated juice to the second copper, and you continue to boil that. And then by the turn the third copper, then you sometimes had some lime to it. Not lime juice, I think it was white lime. Some kind of salt. My uncle, I asked him about 100 times before he passed, and he couldn't tell me what kind of thing. And you find when the elasticity of the sugar, the sugar syrup is getting concentrated, you hold it between the finger, and you find an integument of drool, and it stretches like a rubber band, then you know that you can stop boiling. And you take that third stage, and that's what you skim off and pan into the zinc pan. And behold, and behold, because it cools, it crystallizes to a certain extent, and you have wet sugar. So that part may never come back, because only few mills are back still in Jamaica. I have one in Kingston, that we have from 1899 sugar mill. But one of these days we'll continue these tapes and talk about a child running the back bushes of the mountainside of West Rural St. Andrew. But this morning, I wanted to just sit down and say to you that with all the stresses and things what's going on in the United States at this moment, we have to love the country, love the people, because this is where we are. But if we can find a way of respectfully and decently voice our opinion against certain ills, or take certain actions where we find that it's not good for us, then that's where we go. But I'm talking about a series of old country, olden days. And that's where I start by running the mountainside of West Rural St. Andrew, Jamaica. Shippy the Explorer. I know many of you associate with that. On the next tape, I'll probably talk about housing. Housing in Jamaica in comparison to. So we talk about olden days, we're talking about food then, and we're going to move on to housing. Compare this type of construction with what we do back home and how we manage to survive. But what good take care of yourself, because life's short. And that's what I'm saying, life's short, master. And that is a certain age of 40, 50, 60, and 70, you find that you can't move, you can't bend. You start to have pain all over the place. And sooner or later, we're out of here. But what good, master? We keep in touch. If you like these type of stories, Shippy the Explorer, I think we'll move into a storytelling type of video. Bring back the old sweet old days. Were they sweet? Or were they barren? Or were they tough? Well, we have survived. See you. Like, share, and subscribe to this station. Shippy the Explorer saying, walk good. See you later.